All right. Thank you for all of those who were able to join. Thank you, Aiden, for joining us to discuss this topical subject. And without further ado, Aiden, I'm going to turn it over to you to both introduce yourself as well as the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, my name is Aiden Farrell. I'm an LPC intern based in Fort Worth, Texas. And I am also an employee of Let's Talk to Them, which is a 501(c)(3) that focuses on outreach to potential mass shooters. So the whole idea is that we run these outreach campaigns to meet them where they're at. So we're trying to culturally appeal to them and to appeal to what they are struggling with most, and then through ad campaigns and other forms of outreach. And once we have them there, we're able to connect them to counseling resources that are trustworthy and that do understand some of the things that they're going through. And so in this presentation, I'll also be tapping into some of the work I've done with them as far as content creation and like cultural appeals. And part of the reason I've been able to do that is because I am formerly alt-right. All through my teen years, like I think probably like 14 to 19 or 20. I was on 4chan. I was on several like alt-right spaces, like incel spaces. And so I got really familiar with the culture and exactly why people turn to this kind of ideology. And so I, of course, regret being in there then, but it's allowed me to have that perspective as a clinician and as a content creator, I guess you could say, for Let's Talk to Them. So hopefully I'll have some emic knowledge for you. Um, Let me move my camera down there. There we go. So oh, and one more thing to mention, I'm also doing I'm part of a research team focusing on counseling strategies for individuals with alt-right ideology. So I've incorporated a lot of that into my slides as well. So the first thing we're going to do today is define problematic internet use. So like, how do we determine whether internet use is problematic or not, or what are the positives of it for an individual, and what are the detractors from it. We don't want to go in and remove something that, at least for the time being, is positive and supportive for that person, but we also want to intervene where appropriate, especially if a client is considering violence. Um, to understand PIU, we have to understand the underlying factors behind it. So this would be like the psychological mechanisms that go into that. Um, if we if we look at those and like work on those in more of a general clinical way, then a lot of times the radicalization will start to wane a little bit as they're starting to get their needs met in a way that's more healthy and unconditional as they begin to move away from those spaces. We're going to look at effective interventions within the clinical space. So what we're doing in session as well as outside clinical spaces. So what other roles we as clinicians can take to intervene. So to define PIU, it's ways of using the internet that increase the likelihood of an individual to commit targeted violence. And so there are some like psychological mechanisms that press them towards that that we'll want to watch out for, and I'll go into detail on those. So these will be some feelings they bring up in session or the meanings they derive from these spaces. And then we're going to look at some of the actual like content and platforms that you'd want to look out for. If they mention it, then you can infer some things about the space that they're in. You can't infer everything. Again, the meaning derived from those spaces is individual to that person. But yeah. So how do we assess that? There's a fantastic article, journal article, about radicalization of extreme right lone actors in Western democracies who were primarily radicalized online. So that really narrows it down, right? That's going to be a lot of the people that we're seeing, the incel types, the alt-right types, typically the more um, high risk types as well, or based on the actors that they studied. um, this would be the kind of things to watch out for in clinicians who were unsure, not clinicians, clients who were unsure about the risk level and how deep in they are, what what they're assessing for. Isolation is a big one, of course. How socially isolated are they? What's their family life like? Do they have somebody to turn to? What's their school life like if they're in high school or college? Yeah. um, any offline relationships, especially. Yeah, these are a lot of factors that were not common to all extreme right lone actors, but to put together were common. Yeah, what's the trajectory of their online and offline relationships, really? Are they becoming more isolated? What or who are they turning to? What spaces are they turning to? These are just some things you want to ask once you've built up significant trust. Um, Ease of access. So ease of access to the internet and to these spaces. If they It's pretty hard to control. If they have access to the internet, then they probably can't access these spaces. There's not really a lot you can do without totally taking away their internet use, which comes with other problems of you're taking away their social spaces a lot of the times, and you're taking away their hobbies. So that's particularly hard to know what to do there. Security through anonymity. So this is like, think 4chan, think really most online spaces. You can hide behind a username and you can say and promote all sorts of stuff that you wouldn't normally promote offline. And so that sense of security is important, especially if a client doesn't feel safe being themselves outside of these spaces. Um, on online spaces, these clients also have control over what they engage with and then what they reject. So if they're, say, in some kind of seminar or group therapy, people can call them out. People can say, like, no, or people can just share different opinions. And a lot of times people feel unsafe or they're put on the defensive with that. With internet spaces, they're able to put themselves in, I think echo chamber is kind of a negative word. I try to avoid that word if I can, but in a space where their views are accepted, and they can promote pretty much anything they want, and just exit the page if they don't want to hear it. And they never have to speak to that person again. Um, so, and social stimulus. So, the internet is addicting. We know that. And you're able to get this kind of feedback and this kind of feeling, kind of a good rage, a good kind of adrenaline, and a good like unconditional support and reemphasizing of your own views. You're able to get that 24/7. You're able to log on whenever you want and get that. So it's a lot easier to be radicalized online, of course. Let's see here. There. So these are just a few other studies that were done on mechanisms behind problematic internet use. Um, Again, just some themes you're going to be want to look out for in clinical practice with these clients. Um, Alienation, are they talking about alienation at school, at home, within themselves? Do they feel like not right within this world or within this broader society? Or are they comparing themselves to their peers? And it's like, well, they're not me. I'm going through this and they're not. Um, and identity uncertainty. So of course, that's a huge thing in adolescence and young adulthood. I think it's starting to extend farther into young adulthood and past it um, in this era of choices. Um, Social ostracism is often like a part of group identity for these individuals, incels and alt-right. They're proud that they're socially isolated, that their views go against the norm, and that their culture is misunderstood. It's a secret language that they only understand, and they want to protect that. Um, and then NEET-DUM. So NEET stands for not in education, employment, or training. People are proud to be NEETs. It's comfy to be a NEET. There's a lot of memes of like, Pepe is sitting back and he's sipping his hot chocolate because he doesn't have a job to go to. He doesn't have school. He's just able to coast, and people are envious of that in these spaces. Hikikomori is similar. It's like a shut-in culture in Japan, and a lot of incel and alt-right media. A lot of the people they look up to, the characters in fiction they look up to, they are hikis. They're part of hikikomori, and so they're relatable in that sense. And so a client might come and have not many social connections, but they might have some pride and comfort in that. So it's important not to dismiss that all right, or, you really should find some friends, as if it's that easy. Anti-fandom. So anti-fandom is like you do attacks on other fandoms, and it's like a culture of hate, and that's rewarded within these spaces. So it's encouraged to hate. It's encouraged to feed that anger and attack others. That's seen as something that's part of a cause, and gives meaning to what they're doing to achieve something, like have some small significance in the universe. I'll get into existential stuff a little bit later. Um, Again, a lack of purpose, lack of respect. Incels, like they really want to be respected and taken seriously. They're very they approach things very rationally. They are citing studies, and well, who knows how good the research actually is, but they want to be taken seriously because they don't have a lot of respect in the world. They don't have a lot of respect from women or alpha men as they see it. A lack of control, lack of competence in the world, lack of achievement. So if they're underachievers, if they have a failure to launch sort of mindset, which again, more and more people do nowadays, um, then yeah, they're going to feel inadequate, and they're going to gravitate towards spaces that make them feel more adequate, more accepted, that there are people like them, and that's okay. And as clinicians, we want to emphasize that too. Like, it's okay to be where you're at right now. That doesn't mean you're a failure or that you're doomed to fail, which is the whole idea of black pill is you're doomed, you're in the spot and you're never getting out. You'll always be an incel, um, and so on. That also ties into autism. Autism is especially common in incel spaces, in alt-right spaces. I believe there was an American study of incel spaces, and I believe it was like 18% had diagnosed autism, and then about 74% had self-diagnosed autism. So they hadn't gotten diagnosed, but they really suspected that they did. And so that presents additional challenges. Again, just recognizing that, and and yeah, additional ostracism, of course. So all of these factors come together and form or underlie these ideologies of red pill and black pill. I'm not sure how familiar y'all are with them, but just briefly, red pill is like um, the idea that one's eyes are open to the true nature of the world. And that can be a ton of things. But in the alt-right context, it's like the true world is women have the advantage over men, and only alpha men rise to the top. And, there's global elites controlling things, and it can take a lot of different forms. But it's this awakening that's red-pilled. Black-pilled is more of the incel philosophy of, I'm doomed to be this way. There's no way out. The world sucks. Stacy will always choose Chad. And no matter what I do, this is really at the core of it. No matter what I do, I will not be able to lift myself out of this depression. I will never be able to court a woman. I will never be able to have Stacy or even Becky. Just using some emic terms there. Um, yeah, manosphere would be more of like the really hypermasculine male influencers, work out and, avoid seed oils and be a traditional man and that and a lot of it is good, like taking care of yourself is good, exercising and eating right and having hobbies is good, but then it's taken to a toxic level that involves like a disdain of women um, in manosphere. And then existential rewards. This is part of my paper here. I won't get too deep into it, but the idea that they are meant for something else, that someone predisposed to violence might think, this is my way to get recognition. This is my way to get respect, how to get my message out. This is a way to truly feel alive, to commit this violent act, to uh, sacrifice and then, post about it. Um, Not sacrifice and then post about it, but like make one final post. It's like, bros, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to make us all proud. I'm going to show the world the suffering that I have and we have, and I'm finally going to do something that makes an impact in people's lives, and that sometimes is violence, suicide, homicide, um, yeah, and so on. So as far as the actual platforms you want to keep an eye out for, any kind of chans, so that's like the anonymous image boards. 4chan is often like the kind of entryway. Like people still are radicalized on 4chan, like, but the ones you would often want to be more wary of is if they're on alternative chans and like niche ones, like I don't know, you typically progress there. You typically don't start on 8chan. Well, 8chan's more well known now, but incels.is, yeah, other incel spaces, Kiwi Farms, that's about like, oh, I could talk forever about Kiwi Farms, but it's a site used for making fun of people on the internet who they think are ridiculous or making a fool of themselves, and people are posting about it and doxing them and stuff. Of course, a client is unlikely to say, like, I go on Kiwi Farms. So, but they're just platforms you want to watch out for. Red pill manosphere spaces, and also any red pill, black pill content on mainstream media. There's so much of it out there, and you always hear of the alt-right pipeline, the manosphere pipeline. You get recommended this stuff because um, it activates your brain. Like you get angry, you get excited, you get heard, and so you click on it, and then you get recommended more and more. So you'd want to ask, like, what's your online usage like? Like, describe me in a day, like what you do online and like what sort of stuff you see. Yeah. So you want to watch for withdrawal into, again, I don't like the term echo chambers, but that describes it well. You'd want to watch for some of the stuff that they outline in the CAMS model of Dr. Jobs. You would want to watch for press, psychic, perturbation, hopelessness, self-hatred, any kind of talk around these themes you'd want to watch out for. Of course, violent ideation, talking about a duty or a mission, like I have to do this or I have to, and so on. Um, and access to a means, of course. You'd want to assess for that, especially if they're um, indicating suicidality. Watch for emic language, just like cultural terms used. Like I said, Chad and Stacy and Becky earlier. Um, it's okay not to know those terms. It's really okay. Just ask them. Somebody might say, client might say, I try all the time and I'm so nice to her and I'm so considerate and I've done all this stuff for her, but then Chad comes in and like takes her away from me. And so you might ask, and so who's Chad? Or like, well, tell me about Chad. What is a Chad? Like I've heard the term, but how would you define a Chad? Just ask with genuine curiosity and not in judgment, keeping to those Rogerian principles, not like who's Chad. Um, that's definitely an important stance to take, and I'll get more into that um, in a couple other slides. Yeah, yeah. In fact, right now, how do we intervene within the counseling space? So one thing I have found in my research on de-radicalization counseling is that it's not necessarily suited to this population. De-radicalization counseling models are they're very much focused in on de-radicalize, uh, not deplatform, but disengage. They're like, that's the main focus of counseling. And for a lot of these clients, they're not like hardened and these models don't fit them. Like you don't need to go there to have an impact. And in fact, de-radicalization counseling might not work because you're immediately positioning yourself as an adversary. You are putting a barrier between you as the out group and them as the in group. And it's going to be very tough to do anything with that if you're not first establishing a therapeutic relationship. So Rogers' six core conditions: empathy, unconditional positive regard. You need to build all of that. Well, need is a strong word, but that is the most effective way to make an impact on these clients. Notice how you are reacting. How is your body reacting? Are you tense with this client? Are you passing judgment on them silently or out loud? What language are you using? Um, because people pick up on that stuff. They really do. And so just uh, jotting that down to yourself or just noticing, maybe using some immediacy. Like I'm feeling really tense right now, and I don't know why. Um, uh, yeah. Um, and also worth keep in mind, I just cited a few of these studies here, but counseling for a variety of wellness goals often has the added effect of de-radicalization. So if you work on anger, if you work on unconditional positive self-regard for that client, if you work on negative core beliefs, if you work on social skills, all of this stuff will help in the goal of de-radicalization. The client will be happier, and that's the ideal, right? That they voluntarily disengage from these spaces and are happy about it. So I see a lot of language in the literature about like it being this battle, this adversarial thing between a counselor and a client, a battle of ideas. I saw the second one in the Southern Poverty Law Center's Guide for Counselors Interventions in alt-right ideology. It's necessary first to break through the armor of extremist attitudes. Um, it's not going to work, and I think there is absolutely no room for that kind of rhetoric in counseling literature with this population. Yeah, language stuff. Yeah, you don't want to say, oh, so you're part of a radicalized group or an extremist group. Um, you don't want to think of them as brainwashed or a hate group. Um, you don't want to say, so what's your ideology? That's putting barriers. You don't want to say they're targeting others. It's not targeted. Well, it is targeted violence, clearly, but you don't want to use that kind of language with these clients, and you don't want those kind of words to be swimming in your head as you're counseling a client like this. problematic. That's another big one. Um, so stuff you'd want to initially ask, be open, be receptive, recognize that they maybe didn't ask to be here, or that they don't want to talk about mm, being an incel necessarily, or if they talk about incel related stuff but don't use the word incel, just go with that. I know you didn't ask to be here, and I'm wondering what you'd like to do, what you'd like to get out of this space, and or I don't know if I'd use this language, but I'm sorry that you were put in this position against your will, and I want to do what I can to work with you instead of against you. And yeah, just establishing that trust, I think, will go a long way to clients who have not been offered that before. Um, yeah. Again, open questions about groups, even if you know that they're, um, you know, uh, radicalized groups. Again, tell me about what this group means to you. Tell me about how you feel supported in this space. Tell me about how you feel respected. Tell me about how you feel, um, or it can even go the opposite way. Tell me about how you feel rejected in this space. Tell me about how you feel lonely. Um, yeah, just rolling with it, reflections of feeling and meaning. Again, recognize the positives that the client feels from this space. Really start, like, keep in mind that it's a potentially problematic internet use or potentially problematic space, but start totally from scratch. Tell me about your space. What does it mean to you? Um, and allow them to get out the narrative that they have. And again, keep that genuine curiosity and awe. Um, yeah, the client's probably entering on the defensive, and you are part of the out group. Um, who knows what the client is thinking as they enter counseling? They're generally the regard of counseling in alt-right spaces is that it's feminine, and well, the biggest thing is that they don't understand. They don't get our world. Um, excuse me. Speaking as the client here, yeah, they don't get what it's like to be an incel. They don't get what it's like to be rejected. Like, yeah, maybe you've been rejected in this way, but this is my whole existence. Or you don't understand what, you know, the feeling of having your race under threat, or the feeling of having, um, I don't know, there's just a couple examples. Um, but yeah, for de-radicalization counseling, you start out challenging. You start out, well, maybe not in all models, but you start out and that's the clear goal. Like that's predetermined, like you're in de-radicalization counseling. That is why you're here. So we're going to drill into that. Um, but yeah, first few sessions, just be wary of confrontations. It might just not be the appropriate time. Of course, use your clinical judgment, but yeah. Empathy. So first off, no client should leave a session thinking that violence is an option, that it's okay to uh, harm oneself besides NSSI, but that it's okay to commit suicide or commit violence against another person. No client should leave session thinking that. However, when we look at the literature on um, on suicide and homicide, Jobs, for example, I didn't cite him here. Oh, I did cite him here. Great. Counselors should be prepared to non-judgmentally discuss the functions and existential rewards of violence and hate. So a very tough conversation to have when you do not agree that this is the ultimate expression of self to go out and commit a mass shooting, or to go out and commit a hate crime, but really like be in the client's shoes there. It can be very challenging, but I think they will be amazed that you as a counselor, knowing that you are in the out group, you're still with them, you're still staying with them in the here and now, having this discussion of, yeah, I want to do this, and I'm just feeling so uh, driven to do this and so hopeless. Yeah, just sit with them in that. And that's part of the CAMS model is empathy for the client's suicidal wish. That's something that's missing, I think, from a lot of clinical approaches is instead it's very much, especially for hate crimes, it's shame and blame. Um, and if the crime hasn't been committed yet, then I don't think shaming and blaming is going to push a client away from that, or it's maybe not the best way to do so. Um, so this will be like later in sessions typically. Um, but stuff like how do you feel relief and comfort and security and belonging from your current supports, from your current online spaces? And then you might have, and I don't know, this might be somewhat of a confrontation. Like, how might your current supports be coming up short for your needs? Like, how are you not feeling recognized in there? How are you not feeling supported? Um, and what conditions of worth are you putting on yourself? What conditions of worth are these spaces promoting? Um, and something I think that not a lot of clinicians who aren't educated on these clients and these spaces realize is that it's a very diverse space. There are many LGBT people, there's gay people, there's trans people, there's people that start out alt-right and then realize they're trans and exit the group. There's people of different races. The makeup of incel boards was, gosh, I think it was only like 50% white. Um, yeah, it's people don't realize that the people promoting white supremacy and stuff like this, and heterosexual supremacy and traditionalism are not always the things that they promote. So there's a lot of self-hatred there uh, that we recognize and they recognize too. Yet they stay in the spaces. Um, Ironically, there's a joke on Slash Paul, the 4chan politics board. I remember um, the meme is Slash Paul is the most racially diverse white supremacist group in the world. Um, yeah. So some conditions of worth, I must be white, cisgender, straight. I must always be mentally strong. So these are some intermediate and core beliefs, I guess, going to a CPT model that we can challenge later in the group. It's, of course, not easy. It could take years, but um, you as a clinician can provide that perhaps for the first time for this person. Like you are not worthless, like, or, it's okay to be this. Might be the first time they hear that. And I'm sure many of you have had that experience with the client. Like, nobody's ever said that to me before. How to connect culturally. It's important to understand culture, and that's a lot of what I've been bringing to Let's Talk to Them, and also a big part of what I'm writing in my article. That I think Neil said it, but there's not much on internet use as part of it and internet culture as part of understanding these clients. So it's critical to learn it, but it's difficult to know it all. It's always changing. Again, ask the client, genuine curiosity and awe if you don't know, and learn from them because they'll be excited to share, probably excited to be understood. Adolescent clients are astute bullshit detectors. I just really like that phrasing. If you're phony, if you're like phony authentic and you're trying to, I mean like, oh yeah, 4chan, yeah, I know 4chan, just or if you're like kind of being a mom or a dad, they'll pick up on that. They've been around the internet. They know how to pick out outsiders on 4chan and they'll call it out. They'll say, you know, um, they'll say like, okay, glowy or, whatever. If there's a post that's like, it seems kind of fishy, it seems like they're trying to appeal. just don't pretend to be who you're not. Just be your authentic self. It's okay to be part of the out group. Come at it with genuine curiosity. Um, and this might be controversial, but I think it's okay for them to stay in their current peer support spaces, even if that includes some alt-right and incel ideology. That's where they're finding support and comfort, and you don't want to tear them away from that um, unless it's really acutely harmful. Then you might want to do something about it. But you don't want to make yourself an adversary. Let them make the choice to do that. Let them make a choice. Work within the ambivalence. You'd be like, yeah, so I noticed that you're feeling really unsupported there, and you're black, but you're in these spaces that promote white supremacy, and I'm just wondering how that is for you. What's it like, and are your needs met, and so on. Um, yeah, just non-judgmentally recognize that. Keep an eye on my time here. Okay. Um, Encourage the healthy habits that they have that work within their current schema. You know, exercise, eating right, um, having healthy hobbies, going outside. I mean, few people even in these spaces would say don't do that. Um, so you can bridge those into a a healthier ideology. Um, yeah, if you build trust as a clinician, confront and challenge the things which are causing them distress, the client distress, not what are causing society distress. Like you don't need to combat, you don't, they are your client. Society is not your client. Your goal should not be to better society. Um, and yeah, just keep that in mind. Am I working with my client? Am I there with them, or am I striving for some larger change? Which of course we are, but yeah, let them make the choice, and also monitor for more immediate risk. Um, just like a quick slide on more immediate risk. Yeah, you want to do some more in-depth assessments. You'd want to go to the CAMs. You'd want to go. I actually don't know much about the TSAM. This is my first time learning about it through Neil, but yeah, that sounds really especially good for these clients, and it's empirically supported. You want to collaborate versus being adversarial, empathy versus shame and blame, and so on. And also, how do we intervene outside of the counseling space? This is something that I've been learning quite a bit about through Let's Talk to Them. Again, find overlaps in healthy behaviors, exercise, peer support, spirituality, non-radicalist media. So they love video games, they love anime, they have stuff that is not alt-right, yet they love it and they connect with it emotionally, and they derive so much meaning from it. And that too is part of 4chan culture. It doesn't have to be all right. And I'll get into a couple of things that demonstrate that. Stoicism fits really well. Outdoors, meditation. Yeah. Um, so deradicalizing media, these will just be some things you want to be aware of, maybe that you can guide clients into, like, hey, check this video out. Um, let's see here. Yeah, Healthy Gamer GG. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but his core audience, there are quite a few incels and former incels. He's one of the few creators that really brings everybody together and gives relevant does relevant like psychological talks and self-help talks that kind of diminishes it, but because it's backed up by science. He's a um, Harvard trained psychiatrist. Um, yeah, just exposing them to a greater variety of voices and encouraging that diversity there. So some of the things I've been creating for the Yume campaign, and I'm using this not as a plug, but as a demonstration of the power of cultural appeals for these groups. You'd want to look at media with a cult following, especially on uh, these spaces. Yume Nikki is it's a video game. It's a video game from 2004, and it has 2004 is very relevant. It's just some of the things that are part of it are it's Japanese. They love Japanese stuff. Video games, they slash we. Um, some of the themes, alienation, hikikomori, Madotsuki, which is she's the main character right there. She stays in her room all day and she has these surreal dreams and like escapes and yeah, super cool game. And she commits suicide at the end, which a lot of people identify with. Um, and just it's dark in general. Let's see. Yeah, Wojak as
Sweetie.
well. This is you can use Wojak as a canvas for emotion. That's its original purpose anyway. And I want to try to wrap up here so we can get to questions. But yeah, you can do anything with Wojak. It was created as um, uh, just a way to express any emotion. You change the Wojak. Um, and for this particular campaign, we were looking at disillusionment, failure to launch, anxiety. You know, you think you go to college, you get a great job, and you can't get anything, so you work in McDonald's. Um, yeah, just but all in all, stuff that connects with the healthier, non-radicalized part of this population. So this is kind of my conclusion here. Cultural saliency, we need more of it. Campaigns on client relevant platforms, so going to them. A lot of times we're preaching to the choir. So you'd want to promote on platforms where people see that stuff or, use keywords, use key messages, and so on. And that'll lead to greater competency for educators, clinicians, and other professionals in the field. And just kind of a final question I have for y'all, just something to be thinking about as we move into questions here. Do I have an agenda to de-radicalize my client? Like, can I approach these clients from an entirely humanistic standpoint, knowing in the back of my mind that I want them to de-radicalize? Um, yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about, and I certainly don't have an answer for that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I can send anybody this PowerPoint that wants it. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great talk with so much to think about. Really appreciate how you put it all together. So just want to open it up to folks if people have questions.
Hi, Aiden, I had a question. Uh,
Go ahead.
Very good presentation. I'm Joe Hollifield. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I guess coming from a standpoint of, you talked about de-radicalization that may not work in certain instances. I mean, what are your thoughts on seeing this as also potential violence addiction and kind of using motivational interviewing like pre-contemplation, contemplation, kind of easing them through that through kind
Hmm.
of an addictive model?
Yeah, let me think about that a second. Hmm. Yeah, I think that would definitely be a helpful model to use um, as a clinician to like look at the stages of change where the client is. And I think it's always helpful to have a goal with the client, a collaboratively developed goal, and be like, so we're here right now, and then a few sessions later, you can be like, okay, so if you look at where you were a few sessions ago, you were feeling really helpless, and at this point, look at these changes that you have made, and do we want to continue going in this direction, or do we want to change it up? Um, a little bit. Um, as far as the addiction part of that, internet addiction is real, absolutely. Um, and I think one can especially get addicted to um, the adrenaline rush that comes from feeling hate and feeling the power of dismissing somebody's post online, of the rush of committing an online hate crime, harassing somebody, or a hate crime in real life. There's a real appeal. There's a real like chemical draw to that. I do think that helping a client realize kind of the mechanisms in their brain that are leading to that uh, can can be helpful as long as they're not coming from it um, as an adversary, and then looking at, okay, so how can we get that same fulfillment elsewhere in a healthier way? Um, does that kind of answer your question, Joe?
It does. Thank you. No, it's super helpful. I mean, I love the content that you're providing. It's in kind of a way to approach adolescence with this topic. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Aiden, Mark from the Chicago area. I'm a clinician. Just a question. You mentioned earlier, great presentation. You mentioned earlier about engaging with them while they're still connected to their online network, which I understand. But I know we're introducing some healthier ways. I know sometimes, there's trust in a psychology process, trusting the clinician and stuff. Um, since they may be kind of getting narratives from the healthier therapeutic support, but also the online thing, the online narrative, how do you, as a clinician, would you suggest like maintain that relationship? Because, they may be challenged at some point wondering, can I trust you?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's on a case by case basis, I would say. Um, whether or not they're engaging in those spaces, that narrative is going to be bouncing around in their head. And they are going to be weighing that narrative against the narrative that you are, um, you're not spinning a narrative for them, but they are deriving a narrative from what you are saying. It's a new way of looking at the world. Um, and so, in a sense, it would be good if they didn't have that space continually feeding in there, and maybe it would start to fade. But I think more trust would be established if you were like, I'm not trying to rip you away from these spaces. I'm just trying to see how how else can we get your needs met? How else can we deal with, this loneliness, this agitation, this social ostracism that you're feeling? I think the gesture of not wanting to recognizing the support that those spaces give and not wanting to tear that client away would go really far for therapeutic trust, because not just any clinician would do that.
Thank you. You really addressed that fine balance. So thank you.
Other questions?
Do y'all have any thoughts on the question that I posed at the end? Because like I said, I'm still rattling with it of um, can I truly have a humanistic approach? Or can I truly have a humanistic basis for therapy? It doesn't have to be the primary approach. And have in the back of my mind that I want my client to de-radicalize. What do y'all think?
Well, I mean, Rogers, his whole premise is unconditional positive regard. So, in his training in the 50s, he would go into prisons and work with inmates. And so I think he was a trained minister before that, So I think, you know, if you follow that humanistic approach established by Carl Rogers, you're accepting the person where they're at in their life, and you're not judging, and you're not coming across as judging. That would be kind of I'm cognitively behaviorally trained, but
Mhm.
we all have to have that humanistic approach to build
Absolutely.
that rapport and trust. So
I see Sarah has her hand up, and then after that, there's one in the chat. So Sarah, why don't you go?
Aiden, excellent job. Really well done, by the way, and just in general. I think it depends on what you mean by de-radicalization. And if I think of de-radicalization as just the rejection of violence as a legitimate way to resolve grievances or to get one's needs met personally, then I think you can. I think you can sit with that. But if you're saying de-radicalization is changing someone's fundamental belief structure to represent something that I think is normative and acceptable, then maybe not. And I think there's some gray in there. But if I just set the line at using violence to resolve my grievances and issues, then yeah, I think you can ethically and humanistically approach therapy in this way with this population.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just yeah, I never thought of that of like, well, clearly violence is not an option, but it's you can draw the line there. Um, again, something I've been taught is like, you know, the only thing, and this is very humanistic, but the only thing you say like don't do to a client is don't kill yourself, don't kill someone else. And yeah, number one, I think that's an appropriate line to draw, and knowing that I can draw that line makes it easier for me to sit with the notion that my client can continue to hold um, radicalized views, for lack of a better term, or just the same as, you know, negative core beliefs, and um, just meeting them where they're at. Yeah, I like that.
There's a question in the chat asking, is there any type of intervention with your client's parents?
Intervention of my client's parents. Gosh, well, a lot of times the parents have quite the agenda, especially if they're sending their kid there to be de-radicalized. And they probably would have some questions if I, as a therapist, are not dissuading um, their their child from being in these spaces. Um, as far as intervention with them, gosh, I wouldn't want to tell them to do anything that I wouldn't tell my client to do directly. I'd want everybody to be on the same page there. Um, I would definitely ask the parents, you know, access to means. Do you own a gun? Is it secured? Um, what are you? What are some ways you might be encouraging violent ideation, and what are some things you can do to help your child feel supported as he or she or they is on this therapeutic journey? But just kind of introducing them to the idea that they don't have to immediately change. They don't have to discard these beliefs or exit their current support spaces. And maybe even the idea that these spaces are support spaces is novel to the parents or guardians. So just some basic education on that, I think, would go a long way. Same with teachers and other people in the child's life.
Aiden, I'm curious about sort of internet controls or access to
Yeah,
internet, and whether you think that just sets up a power dynamic or is a critical component, or what. And I'm sure some of it's the age of the client, but you know, we've got
yeah.
anywhere from early adolescence through
Hmm.
later
Hmm.
adolescence. I'm just curious, you have thoughts on what's helpful in relation
Yeah.
to
Of
parenting,
course,
right?
the idea is that they disengage on their own. Um, if they are an adolescent and, are under 18 and do have parental and teacher controls on internet use, yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to see a study on whether restricting internet access is effective in that. I know that if you put parental controls on sites, a lot of times they'll find a way around it anyways. And that doesn't address the issue of them being socially isolated and miserable. And they may or may not be miserable, of course, but I'm not super familiar with the technologies that can be implemented by parents and educators to restrict or monitor internet use. But I can definitely see some situations, especially in like early adolescence, where something like that would have a positive impact and be an appropriate intervention for a client.
Thank you so much. We're coming close to the end of our hour here. I know I, for one, would love to have a copy of your PowerPoint slides. It'd be great to see all the citations and very helpful information you put together. So if you maybe could send that to Neil, I think he sometimes will share it out with the group, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. You want me to send it just to you?
I was going to say,
Like
send it to Neil. Neil usually
Oh, to
shares it
Neil.
with the group.
Okay.
Yep.
You've got his contact, right?
I share the
Yes, I do.
recording, Aiden. So in the same email, I share the recording link. I'll share the slides.
Wonderful. Awesome.
All right. So thank you so much. Neil, do you have any closing comments for us or pointing us towards the next meeting?
So we will meet same time, same place, Thursday at noon next week for TSAM consultation. If anyone has a case, we would love to hear from you. Just email me or Heidi. Me or Emma. And with that, Aiden, thank you. And thank you to all who were able to join.
Thank you so much, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.